And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Kasarian, and welcome back to Armored Warfare. Alright, so today we are doing a live recording video, and we're going to actually talk about some differences between Armored Warfare and World of Tanks. That's right, our two games. We're going to talk about the differences there. While we do that, I'm just going to be doing some grinding. Because why not? Spearhead. So, what are some of the big differences between Armored Warfare and World of Tanks? And why am I talking about this? Well, the reason I'm talking about this is because I hear some complaints on some forums and in different places, cough cough, World of Tanks forums, cough cough, that Armored Warfare is basically just a World of Tanks clone. And as someone who has been sinking in more time into this game than I want to admit I've been sinking into this game, I can say that that is entirely inaccurate. Okay? Armored Warfare is not a World of Tanks clone. Not by a long shot. Your first match in this game, you will learn this is not World of Tanks and not to drive like it. So how is it not like World of Tanks? Well, one of the very first things is what I'm doing right now. PvP, PvE, player versus environment, killing NPCs instead of other players. You have the option in this game. You know, we have a bit more varied missions than just kill all enemies. And let's face it, World of Tanks PvP basically degenerates into kill all enemies. End of story. You know, I think I've seen like 3 games where we managed to end the game in some way other than kill all enemies.
They say they take from the rich and give to the poor. But so far, all they've done is take. Move quickly and recapture the refinery.
That went well. Okay, what is wrong with you this morning? There we go. And come on, reload before that beam. No.
They hit us hard.
Got him. Okay, so we actually have different types of missions in this game.
No effect.
And we have very different play styles, actually.
Ricochet. Ammo up.
Alright, let's advance now. Oh, it's a C2. That's why we're having issues penning. There we go. I gave him a weak spot. Okay. Wow, I'm terrible today. Here we go. And there we go. Okay. So, what is another difference? Well, I'd say one of the big differences is more detailed systems modeling. And what I mean by that is,
Black Company, take out the refinery's generators.
the game actually cares. That's a Terminator, and that's a crash tank. The game actually, to a degree, cares what your setup is. In other words, you know, if you look at me right now, and did that send charges fire higher explosives? Turn.
Target locked. No effect.
Turn. Ah! Huh? Okay, there we go. I'm gonna have to burn that rebuild kit now. There we go.
Autoloader's back up.
So, one of the things that I like about this game a lot, though, is that it actually has balanced artillery. And what do I mean by balanced artillery? Well, you'd really have to have played World of Tanks to get this in terms of how their artillery worked. But let's just say that artillery in Armored Warfare was bad. Or in World of Tanks, excuse me. Oh. Let's use that. You know, it would just...
Huh?
For the love of...
Target destroyed.
There we go.
Target destroyed.
Anyways, it would just kind of sit there and hammer you for an hour or two.
Fraction.
Pretty much with impunity.
Destroyed.
Right through the box. Alright. And it, you know,
Identified.
it was supposed to counterbalance against campers,
Stop. Armored reinforcements are on the
but
way.
really what it ended up doing was driving us all crazy.
Secure the facility's interior.
Target destroyed.
They're trying to surround you. Don't lose the refinery.
Target locked. Reloading.
Nailed them.
Ow.
Target down.
Alright, we got a...
No effect. Target locked.
And one more to do the trick.
Target down.
We're hit.
Target locked.
Oh, I got killed finally. Alright. I was driving too much like an MBT there. Anyways, so, artillery in World of Tanks. It'll just sit there, it'll hammer you all day long with no mercy, no give. And it's really irritating. It really is. And there's no way you can kill it. Well, until one of your AFVs gets, you know, behind them or something. And then, yeah, okay, fine, you could get them. But, you know, there's no way in the beginning of the match to actually suppress their artillery like you'd be able to do in real life. You just kind of have to sit there and take it. However, Armored Warfare found a solution to that. What is that solution? Well, what Armored Warfare said was, hey, by the way, the reason I'm running light tanks right now is because I have Light Tank King Challenge. Yeah. I also have SPG King, which I'm getting rid of now. TD King. Okay, well, we'll take that. Alright, that's fine. However, in Armored Warfare, we have counter battery and reduced artillery damage. And what that does is it kind of pushes everything towards artillery as a support asset. You use artillery to support the rest of your formation. Alright? And that's really important. And that is a huge change to the game. To have artillery supporting your weapons fire and supporting your team's advance versus just being this killing machine that wipes out everything nearby. We'll do medium. That wipes out everything nearby. You know? So, we also have map design is hugely different between Armored Warfare and World of Tanks. And this applies to some maps, but not all of them. Armored Warfare really relies a little bit less on lanes. We're about to play Starry Night, which is not a lane-y map, quote-unquote. What I mean by laney is that it isn't split into designated lanes, and you don't have, okay, east, north, left, right, and center lanes. Make sure you have someone in all of them, or else you're going to die. And because of other mechanics changes, which we'll get into in a minute, Armored Warfare avoids degrading into sort of Campanovka style stupidity. I think anyone who's played World of Tanks really remembers Campanovka. That stupid map. It was always an absolute cluster on the left side of the map. Right? We all remember that. How am I? Okay. It was always an absolute cluster on the left side of the map. In the center of the map, it was always absolute just camp city. You couldn't go or get anywhere. It was ridiculous. But we all remember Campanovka. Armored Warfare doesn't tend to do that as much. When we get into this game, you'll be able to see what I mean. But you will be able to see that we actually have a very wide open map, very expansive open map, and it's really going to be a maneuver heavy game once we get out of the city. Nah. I was going to make a StarCraft joke, but I just decided, nah, whatever. Alright, 24 seconds. I'll probably switch to Sabo once I get a couple rounds downrange. So the last major change or difference, is actually the tanks themselves.
Black Company. It seems that the lines of
in between...
are a constant thorn in our side. It appears they are after this town to use as a food source. Knowing that, they will probably burn the farm to the ground if they can't get their way. Stay sharp. Incoming intel. Looks like the Lions have prepared fuel trucks for their contingency plan. Destroy the trucks, so they can't use it to burn.
Yes, we're not sticking our nose through here.
Identify target.
There we go.
Identify. Load heat.
Look at how zippy this thing is.
Load heat.
So, one of the things that's so nice about this vehicle, or so nice about Armored Warfare in general, is that in World War II you had the light, medium, and heavy tank concept designs. Ow, that actually hurt. Why did you... You had the light, medium, and heavy tank designs. And light tanks were fast and maneuverable. Medium tanks were less fast and maneuverable, and more... They're really the main battle tanks
They're targeting the central farm, just as I suspected. If anything happens to them,
you had heavy tanks, and heavy tanks were big, slow, typically, and not actually that useful in an offensive warfare situation. Partially because of their speed disadvantages. Well, then... Alright, let's not be where I'm sitting right now. Okay. So, in between the war... Really? There we go. So in between, after the end of the Second World War, one of the things that happened was that they basically got rid of the light, medium, and heavy tank concept. And what they said was, all right, from now on, we are going to build one tank. The main battle tank. Now, the MBT actually kind of grew out of...
Identified.
The MBT kind of actually grew out of the medium tank and not the heavy tank. It was designed as a more survivable medium tank and less as a more heavily armored light or a faster heavy tank. There we go, I can talk. So, the MBT in a lot of ways retained the heavy frontal armor and other characteristics of a main battle tank, or of a heavy tank. But it did change them up in a couple respects.
Identified.
Okay, so apparently my team's derping up pretty hard today.
Identified. Hostile tank. Road Sabo. Take it apart.
Good. I was worried there for a moment. I'll be sure to add a bonus to your...
There we go.
Rotor Sabo. Take it apart. Road Sabo.
And got him. So, one of the things they did is they basically said, okay, well, the light tank basically became... It became both the light tank and the armored fighting vehicle. And that development occurred partially because the light tanks that are in the game, most of them are actually what we would call air mobile tanks. They're tanks designed to be dropped from helicopters or airplanes. They're not really light scout vehicles. Whereas AFVs really fill that role of scouts. They are now the scout vehicles of the modern military. The heavy tank and the medium tank basically got merged into the MBT, is what I was trying to say earlier. You have the heavy frontal armor, powerful guns, but decent mobility. The downside is that the MBTs actually sacrificed their side armor and rear protection to maintain their mobility. So what that means is that relative to the enemy that they're fighting, a modern MBT actually has, again, relatively less protection on his side turret, on his side and his rear, than a World War II MBT does. Now, what that means tactically is, you can side scrape in all the tanks. You show the side like that so it bounces off. Don't do that. Because really, you're going to take a Sabo shell from another 120, 140 millimeter main gun, and it's going to punch right through you. Because your side armor's thin. Very thin. But they had to. They had to keep the mobility up somehow, and cutting down on side and rear armor makes sense. If your tank is designed to fight from the front, and have buddies on his left and his right, then why not cut down the side armor? We've also kind of lost the we've kind of lost the old armored casemate style tank destroyer. That poor guy kind of fell by the wayside and died a painful death. He's just not as useful, With the speeds tanks can do nowadays, you need to be able to turn your turret to actually track these things. I mean, the M1A1 main battle tank is going to do 40 to 50 miles an hour. You need to be able to turn that turret to track him. Maybe you can do one more game. Now let's just finish this up. So, the increased mobility and protection of these MBTs make it really unfeasible to have a slow-moving brick of armor without a turret. So instead you run into tank destroyers like, for example, our B-1 Centauro, which is lightly armored, wheeled mostly vehicles with MBT grade armaments. I mean, this guy is, what is he packing, a 120? No, he's 105. Yep, he's packing the same 105 that's off the original M1 Abrams, I believe. A slightly different variant thereof. In many cases, this results in something of like a poor man's main battle tank. With, you have the firepower of a tank, of a main battle tank, but you're not quite as good, basically. Yeah. They operate in the same vein as were the American tank destroyers, like the American Hellcat in World War II, sniping at long range and then getting out of there with their speed. So, what you also tend to see in armored warfare is improvements in fire control have resulted in a much increased capacity to actually shoot on the move. The advancing power of modern guns, combined with the sacrifice that have to have been made to MBT side armor in maintaining mobility, means that most MBTs can't resist on a side armor hit, as I said earlier. So, you can't side scrape. Sorry, guys, no side scrape. So, what do we draw out of this as the conclusion? Well, main battle tanks and most armored vehicles in armored warfare are very mobile compared to their World War II counterparts. I mean, let's look at the Challenger 1. This is the tankiest of tanks. This is like a slow boat heavy tank from World of Tanks. You're still going to do 55 kilometers an hour. It's still going to get up there and move, It can still really kind of get its hull turned around. And it's a British tank, but it's not the TOG. We're much more mobile. We have much better maneuverability. We're actually pretty much better all around, advancing technology and all that. But this brings us to a more mobile, active game. You keep moving. You advance. You push. I don't care if it's AI or PvP. You push until you hit contact. Then you engage the contact. You fire. You reload. You stop. You shoot. You move again. If you're not reloading or aiming, you should be moving. Simple as that. If you're not reloading or aiming and you're in a main battle tank, like, let's say our M1A1, you should be moving at all times. Alright, we clear? Good. Alright, that wraps us up for this episode. This has been a video of differences between Armored Warfare and World of Tanks. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you didn't, well, let me know what was wrong and I will do my best to fix it in the future. If you did like the video, give me a like, comment, and or subscription. I would greatly appreciate it. It would make me feel all sorts of warm and fuzzy inside to know that you appreciate what I'm doing with Armored Warfare. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Mr. Kassarian. And as always, good hunting.